hasta la fecha hemos tenido un descuento de hasta el 40% sobre el gasto que hacen, la inversión que hacen las producciones internacionales y nacionales en Colombia. Es decir, hemos hecho películas de mayor nivel de producción. Nuestras películas colombianas que veníamos haciendo del orden de $1 millón, pues hemos participado en películas de hasta 60 millones de dólares, con unos estándares, con una especialidad del talento muy importante. Y bueno, sé decir la cifra en pesos, ustedes me ayudan, pero se han invertido en Colombia del orden de 185.000 millones de pesos. Y realmente cuando hacemos las cuentas de lo que se invirtió en el país, de lo que ganamos en conocimiento, en entrenamiento y en percepción de Colombia como escenario de rodaje, el impacto es sin precedentes.
Muchas gracias, Claudia. La implementación de este incentivo desde el año 2012 evidencia el empleo del sector no solo en términos económicos, sino también en formación profesional de desarrollo de talento colombiano y para promocionar el país como locación. Ahora, el viceministro Felipe Buitrago nos puede contar qué son estos cambios que en la legislación colombiana ha hecho el decreto 474/2020, que potencializa esta apuesta del gobierno nacional a la industria, creando un nuevo incentivo y la ampliación a otros géneros audiovisuales.
Muchas gracias, Silvia. Un saludo para Claudia muy especial, que siempre ha estado al frente del sector en Colombia. Y pues precisamente por eso último que nos decía Claudia, ese gran éxito en la atracción entre 55 y 60 millones de dólares en inversiones, con unos incentivos que, como bien dice Claudia, en términos relativos son pequeños, pero con los que hemos estado logrando hacer muchísimo, pues precisamente es que desde el Plan Nacional de Desarrollo del presidente Iván Duque se concertó con las agentes del sector una expansión muy importante del ámbito de aplicación de la ley 1556. Lo primero fue que ampliamos el número de géneros, pasamos de estar enfocados casi de manera exclusiva en el cine a abrirnos a otros géneros como la televisión, de una manera ya digamos clara, las series de televisión, los videos musicales, la realización audiovisual publicitaria, videojuegos y las series de contenidos cortos para web. Esta ampliación que además es la que está en este momento en el manual, pero podría ampliarse a otros géneros audiovisuales si así se quisiera, es precisamente una apuesta por la comprensión de la convergencia que se viene dando a nivel mundial en cuanto a las ventanas de comercialización, las ventanas de exhibición, pero también a los mecanismos de producción. No así las narrativas son diferentes, pero la complementariedad en los servicios, por ejemplo, entre videojuegos y la postproducción cinematográfica es evidente, y precisamente apostarle a una integralidad de la cadena fue un primer paso, una primera apuesta de esta ley. Lo segundo fue que esta ley también tenía una fecha límite. Esta ley expiraba en el año 2022. La ampliamos hasta el 2032 para darle certidumbre jurídica a los potenciales inversionistas y socios del audiovisual en Colombia, para que sepan que van a poder seguir trabajando en Colombia por lo menos durante el resto de esta década. La reforma de la 1556 mantiene el Fondo Fílmico Colombiano, el FFC, y mantiene que este fondo, que tiene recursos líquidos en una cuenta, puede hacer un reintegro de recursos hasta del 40% de los servicios audiovisuales consumidos en Colombia y hasta el 20% de los servicios logísticos, hotelería, transporte, ¿cierto? Utilería, o sea, diferentes tipos de apoyo logístico, precisamente como parte de esa compensación por grabar en Colombia. Pero el SINA, que el SINA no es un fondo, el SINA es un certificado audiovisual, es decir, para el gobierno nacional otorga a través del Ministerio de Hacienda y del Consejo Nacional de Economía Naranja, que es el organismo coordinador de la política de desarrollo de la economía creativa en Colombia, ese organismo nos otorga un cupo para poder otorgar beneficios fiscales a un monto de inversión. Para este año, el valor del SINA es del orden de los 65 millones de dólares, es decir, solamente para este año estaríamos haciendo una apuesta de atracción de inversión del orden del 120% de lo que se atrajo en los últimos 8 años. Esto no es porque los últimos 8 años no sean buenos, es todo lo contrario, porque han sido tan buenos y nos han permitido consolidar una cadena con crews de buena formación, con capacidad productiva, con manejo de locaciones, con una identificación cierta de no solamente los recursos, sino también de los trámites, de los servicios que se pueden ofrecer para que el audiovisual sea exitoso en el país. Nos atrevimos a dar un salto tan grande. Este cine, además, lo que hace es que reintegra el 35% del valor.
Integrates 35% of the value of total consumption of audiovisual services in the country, which is to say, if there's a $10 million expenditure in the Colombia, the certificate would be granted for $3.5 million. It's absolutely liquid. This is a certificate which can be traded in the secondary market. It's not considered an income in Colombia, which means that it does not incur any tax, right? $10 million, it can be in dollars. It would be granted to whoever makes the investment here in the country. So it's a very liquid resource. As part of the administrative cost, up to 5% of the nominal value of the certificate can be destined to administrative costs. But this is, of course, a minor factor considering the flexibility of the system. According to the genre, various limits apply. There is a minimum investment of more or less $475,000 to be considered both for the FFC funds and the SINA. And this minimum applies for film works, but if it's used for other genres, such as, for instance, series, television series, this minimum sum can be spent on a maximum of 4 chapters, or 4 chapters for every 475,000. If I'm applying with the Colombian Film Fund, this can be used for a package of up to 20 music videos. If it's with SINA, we want them to be larger projects, so it would be 5 music videos to make up that sum, or else 5 advertising campaigns, or else 5 video games, which can be considered together to make up that sum. This includes film works, television series, and music videos. SINA includes the following categories. The FFC has a production and post-production component, and post-production so long as production has been carried out with FFC as well. It also includes animated films. For SINA, it includes production and post-production, along with production, and post-production alone, as well as animation. FFC can include applicants who are Colombian entities as well as international, whereas for SINA, only foreign applicants may submit petitions, entities that are not liable to income tax in Colombia. Both for the FFC and SINA, for film works, they must be carried out within 9 months, unless post-production is included, in which case their allowance is extended to 18 months. For television series, 12 months of execution, or 24 months if it includes post-production. For animation and video games, up to 48 months for execution, given the complexity inherent to these productions. For music videos and advertising, because they are packages, we also grant 18 months for production and post-production. For those who are coming only for post-production to Colombia, they will have 18 months to conduct it. Applications are very simple. All we need is information of the producer, the international producer, along with the local one, information on expenses to be carried out in Colombia. So much in audiovisual services, so much in logistics services, and lastly, information on the project. Of course, in the case of the film, it would include the script. In the case of a television series, it would include, or if it was a package of video games or music videos, we would need 1 or 2 of the scripts as well as a sketch of the rest of the production. In addition, we require a guarantee deposit. Once funds have been assigned for Colombia, in order to reserve that, you will need a deposit of some porcina. But in the event that the production be canceled or moved to another location not in Colombia, then that reservation will be lost. This is a way that we ensure that all of the Colombian funds are expended. The Colombian Film Committee is made up of 7 members. It is presided over by the Ministry of Commerce, supported by Colombia and the Ministry of Culture. There are 2 delegates directly from the President's office, people with broad experience in the audiovisual sector, and there is 1 representative of the producers of the National Council for Art and Film Arts. The SINA certificate will begin to be offered in some 2 to 3 weeks. Hopefully, next week, the final administrative details will be hammered out so that we can begin receiving applications from interested parties. So these are the details. It's a bit long, and I apologize for that, but frankly, it's a very important offer with many moving parts. Yes, on that point, I'd like to invite you to visit the Commission's webpage, which is www.locationcolombia.com, where you can find the manual for fund designation, both in English and in Spanish. This is the document that you will have to peruse that contains all of this information regarding the application process. Another question for the Vice Minister, Felipe Buitrago. This government has implemented the National Strategic Interest Project, which includes the audiovisual sector. It's no secret that the business climate and the matter of production in a country is almost as important as the incentives that the country will be able to offer. Could you explain a bit about that project? That's right, Sylvia. Precisely given the experience we've had in Colombia, you and Claudia has been leading conversation around the number of issues that have to be considered since October 2018, with a strategic waiver for the orange economy, the creative economy on the part of the Colombian government. Audiovisual production was considered a project of national strategic interest, which means that at the offices of the president, there is a team that has a representative in each of the necessary and important agencies. Properly registered. There will be a team at the president's office itself supporting the production. When it comes to importing and exporting equipment, we also have been doing work to improve and broaden new studios and infrastructure for audiovisual production. We have also been working hand in hand with various international partners so there could be technology transfer in order to improve our local production capacity with crews that are better trained. We have had 4K production workshops, equipment management workshops, various diplomas and certificates. with the National Learning Service, the SENA in Colombia, which is the Colombia institution that trains people for work. We have also been developing technical bilingualism programs with the SENA so that our local talent can work easily with international crews. We have also been working to standard paperwork and services for them to be more predictable, take less time, require fewer documents. So we know that time is of the essence when it comes to audiovisual production. So we're hoping to help them to reduce delays, which would be a disincentive for production in Colombia. We have also been working with various agencies on the use of public goods. One important point for many audiovisual productions, especially the big budget ones, has to do with, for instance, being able to access a military base or shoot military operations live. That can be fundamentally important. We have done very important work. We have made progress. We even enjoyed technology transfer from the Marine Corps of the United States, which are experts on this. And they have helped us to improve our protocols and develop best practices for audiovisual production. We've also established fiscal treatment for foreign personnel, which makes them exempt from double taxation so that they can be confident that their income in the country will not incur taxes. We're also working on an expansion. We had a list of services, audiovisual services that were exempt from sales tax. For producers, we are broadening the list of audiovisual services that are included in that benefit. And in the coming weeks, the decree that legalizes this broader package of services will be issued. In addition, although it wasn't forbidden, although it wasn't regulated, we are now regulating the labor of underage personnel. Because it wasn't forbidden, but neither was it regulated, the authorities were being too strict. And we are also limiting the development of certain minors who presented Colombian talent. We have had frank discussions with the authorities to guarantee all the rights of minors, preventing any form of exploitation, but granting them the opportunity to participate in the development of ideas that they can develop their talent. And also lending predictability to a producer regarding what to expect when they present an application requesting for a minor to be allowed to work after 8 p.m. We have already seen examples of unstucking processes. We had a Thai film that had been working for several months, if not years, to get permission. And through PINE, within a few works, they were already shooting at an important Colombian work. Silvia knows the name of the producer. She's practiced it. But we already have success stories of what the PINE means. Yes, I will say the name. It's the famous Thai film director Apichakong with Miracle, winner of the Palme d'Or. Felipe, one final question. Last week, ultimately, the decree that includes the biosecurity protocol was issued for shooting in Colombia. Could you discuss briefly how shooting is going to be reactivated in Colombia? Certainly, Silvia, the elephant in the room, so to speak, is that we find ourselves in the midst of a pandemic. And of course, the first evidence of that is that we find ourselves online and not face-to-face in France enjoying the Mediterranean climate. Colombia has already given itself a task of developing biosecurity protocols, which were developed with the Chamber of Commerce and industry, taking into account the best international standards. These are protocols that are strict as far as guaranteeing the security of personnel that will be on set, but are also reasonable in the sense that they do not impose undue burdens that make production impossible. At present, the protocols have already been sanctioned, and the next step is that when a production is to take place, it will depend on the local authority, depending on whatever curfews are in place. We know that there are several cities that are already doing quite well in their pandemic management and will be granting permissions very soon. Others that will likely only be handing permissions for indoor shootings, and others that will continue to be closed precisely because they are facing a peak in pandemic contagion. So we are here to support you. That's part of what the PI&E is about, for this government to be able to guarantee access to information as to where shooting is available, and also to help smooth out whatever difficulties may emerge. We expect productions to reactivate within the next 2 or 3 weeks in various parts of the country. And one important point for international production is that around the 1st of September, international flights will be reactivated from and to Colombia. Certainly, we know that some will want to do some scouting or a visit beforehand. So we are also willing to discuss permissions for flights on private planes, should that be the case. Thank you very much, Felipe. Now I would like to discuss things with Mr. Guerrero, Colombian producer and partner in the film AG Studios. Rodrigo Guerrero has participated in many of the largest productions that have taken place in Colombia. So I'd like to ask him, what are the merits that these productions have found in Colombia, and what have we yet to improve? Can you hear him? We can't hear him.
Por favor, activarle el sonido,
Yo-
Rodrigo.
Are you there, Rodrigo?
Silvi, ¿por qué no cuentas un poco cuál fue la última producción que hizo Rodrigo mientras aparece?
Sylvia, why don't you tell us a bit about Rodrigo's last production while he gets online? Well, yes, I would have loved for him to be able to talk about it himself. But while the team sorts out this technical issue, his last production was a television series, one of the largest and most important, which is Jack Ryan. This was produced by Paramount for Amazon. Is your sound activated, Rodrigo?
Sí, creo que está teniendo problemas con el micrófono de él
I think he's having trouble with his microphone. Can you hear me now? Yes, we can hear you. Okay, well, greetings and good morning to those of you who are in Colombia and France on the other side of the Atlantic. Our experience with production services in Colombia has been excellent. We have made good progress in acquired experience, and we can glimpse a good path ahead when it comes to understanding the strengths of Colombia as a country, as a destination, and where we have the best opportunities for improvement. Thus far,
Todo perfecto.
I can't say that everything has been perfect. There has certainly been a learning curve, and everyone from the industry who's connected right now knows that no audiovisual production lacks such surprises. It would be false to say the contrary. But in Colombia, there has been an important group of clients that have had very satisfactory experiences, clients that continue to shoot in Colombia clients that want to again in Colombia and that are very eager about the new package of incentives that the country is offering. The PIME program that Felipe was discussing, the PIME, or PIME, this is the macro structure that allows us to have the entire machine well calibrated. It does us little good to have major financial incentives if we have trouble with customs or trouble with access to locations or limitations regarding schedules for minors who are functioning as talent on set. So it's important to discuss how incentives are working in parallel with the PINE or PINE program as coordinated at the President's office. And as the Vice Minister Felipe Buitrago said, it has been a tremendous gain to have a team dedicated to PINE at the President's office. That is a terrific decision when it comes to the process of recent years, and we will continue to refine it moving forward. As far as benefits for Colombia, I don't want to take too much of your time. We know that Colombia has extraordinary biodiversity, unique in the world, and this, I believe, we have to say it as it is. Colombia is the second most biodiverse country in the world. This is reflected in our variety of locations and the people who inhabit our country. Racial diversity is very important when it comes to shooting in Colombia, as well as the diversity of locations. Not all locations have the same ease of access, but there they are. And depending on the size of the production, there is one way or another to access them. So benefits in this regard are broad. Colombia's time zone is very interesting because we are smack dab the center and very close to the equator, and especially in a neutral time zone vis-a-vis the United States. So there are many benefits there. As far as the points to consider, and I will discuss four, that typically come up for international producers, and it's worth remarking on in this call. The first is the exchange rate. The Colombian peso is certainly a currency that depends on the dollar. It is very much linked to the behavior of the dollar, as well as the price of oil. So everything that takes place in the world with regards to the dollar and oil will be directly reflected in the exchange rate for the Colombian peso. Usually, producers ask, how can I protect the production's cash flow given the fluctuations of the Colombian peso vis-a-vis the dollar? In this regard, the best piece of advice, and it's also advice for local producers, is to block the budget in Colombian pesos. We always produce a budget in dollars or euros, depending on where the production is coming from. But the sooner you can block a budget in pesos in the local currency, you improve your risks as related to exchange rate change. And that way you'll be shooting in the local currency. So the exchange rate typically benefits the international producer because the Colombian peso fluctuates but tends to devalue vis-a-vis the euro or the dollar, which means that foreign investors or producers will see savings in their cash flow. So that's one bit of advice. What you have to consider is that while those savings may work when you're sending money to Colombia, at the end of the process, when you go to receive the tax rebate, when the Colombian tax rebate is sent back to your country, then you have the opposite effect. The Colombian pesos, as granted by the tax rate, must be converted to the local currency, dollars or euros, and that may, to some extent, neutralize the benefit obtained along the way. But in general terms, that's one way to do it. Another point is that there are exchange houses, not many, but they, with which foreign producers can arrive at agreements of exchange rate. So they block a fixed exchange rate throughout the life of the project when they're sending and when they receive the tax rebate. That has been of a great aid to international producers because that way they know exactly what exchange rate they can count on. And they've been able to mitigate the fluctuation in exchange rate. The second question we get asked frequently is, how can productions be sure that they will be granted the incentive? Formerly, when there was only a fund, and that path still exists. So the first step is to apply to the fund, and once the project is approved, money is assigned, separated for that project if it's properly executed, if it's properly legalized, and all the demands of the law are satisfied, the money is there for them. If the project is not well executed, not properly legalized, well then that's the fault of local or international producers who have not held up their side of the bargain. Now, this path continues live, but there's an additional second way, which is INA, the Audiovisual Investment Certificate, which is the path that we will begin to discover as it becomes effective. In order to turn the certificate into cash for the international producer, certain agreements must be made with companies or businesses in Colombia who pay taxes and buy those certificates in a private transaction between private agents. So we are still in the process of determining how much the value of the sale of the certificates will be. We will come to understand that in this early stage of the activation of the new system. The third point is, the third thing we're always asked about is the cash flow for the incentive. There are companies and businesses, such as entertainment partners and banks in the United States, that can make agreements to make an advance on the incentive, which is to say a loan against guaranteed incentive. Unfortunately, in Colombia, banks' interest rates are extremely high to make it interesting to compete against international supply to cover that cash flow. For that reason, in Colombia, as of yet, there have not been competitive, interesting options through which an international producer can finance the production and cover that cash flow with an advance on the incentive or the tax benefit. So in this sense, businesses such as entertainment partners use European or American banks where interest rates are considerably lower than in Colombia and where the producer can project a loan to be paid once the Colombian tax benefit is received. And the fourth point worth mentioning is the challenge that lies ahead as far as managing television series or longer productions through the trust system. In Colombia, all payments must be done through trusts. This is what is known in the United States as a trust fund. It's not a normal checking account. It's not a savings account. It's not a standard banking account that has typically been used for series and is the international standard. A trust fund is a more restrictive system when it comes to operations itself. It requires prior approvals, a certain follow-up, and especially a projection of cash flow that is very detailed, because the trust cannot make a payment today for a need that emerges today at a trust. I have to present a request for payment, and it takes the bank a few days to process the payment. Therefore, it's important to say, wow, the sun just rose here in Bogota. It's hitting me right. So what I'm trying to say is that it's important that both local producers that are on this Zoom call, as well as foreign producers and companies, understand that cash flow management from now on series is what is going to need most careful attention and care, because we may run into trouble if cash flow isn't planned out very carefully. It's no longer like it was, as we've been doing it for years with films. All the films that have been done with Lot 56 for years have been managed with trust funds. So it's not something completely foreign to us. We know how to use it, but now we're going to begin using it for television series and new formats. It requires a careful planning process. That's my message for producers. We have to be paying attention here. Both the Colombian producers and the international producers have to make sure that we do not take lightly the importance of cash flow plans according to the scripts and production needs. Those were the 4 points that I wanted to share with you.
Silvia,
Ya, sí, perdón. Te estaba agradeciendo a Rodrigo y contándoles que vamos.
Much for the people. I want to say we're going to move on now to questions and answers. We already have several and submitted to the chat. I'd like to invite the 89 participants that are here with us to please formulate your questions through the chat box, or else you can send them to our email info@locationcolombia.com. The first question is, where is the infographic or more information on this initiative that is being explained, FFC and yeah. As I said, we have the webpage of the Film Commission, which I've mentioned several times. We are working on having material that's easier to broach than the manual itself, and hopefully you'll find it soon on that website, and we will share it on our social network, of course, generally. Next question, I would like to tap Rodrigo's experience here for him to help formulate it or answer. It says, what determines whether we should use Law 1556 or SINA beyond budget? How do we choose whether to go with the SINA or with the Colombian Film Fund?
Creo que, bueno, la duda que tengo es si la pregunta era...
The question is whether the question is about Fondo, the FFC, and SINA, or which law they're referring to. I think the question is whether to go through the fund or go through SINA. The question is the Colombian Film Fund or SINA. Well, the first thing you need to know is whether there are funds available at the fund. If there are no funds, then that option is eliminated. And the only option that remains is SINA. That's the first way to answer that question. The second is, what format do you have? As the Vice Minister explained, although certain formats can go both ways, there are certain formats that can only go one of the two ways. So the question doesn't indicate what the format is, but that would be a key piece of data to determine what path to use. But let us suppose that there are funds in the fund and that the format applies to both the fund and SINA. In that case, the analysis ought to be what the maximum budget is, because while at the fund, the maximum budget is at present 50% of the available funds, and soon we will know whether there's going to be some adjustment to the designation manual and how the funds are assigned. But in SINA, there's not a maximum per project, which is a very important point. While there is a global cap on the program of incentives, with SINA, there is not an individual cap per project. So if what you have is a big film or a big series, and you need a big budget expenditure, it's better to go with SINA because you won't run caps there. But there's not enough information in the question to be able to make a specific recommendation. But based on the question, those are the three things to consider. Vice Minister Augusto Sandino asked, given COVID, which has affected financing of the FDC for 2020 and likely for 2021, in the interest of guaranteeing film activity, is the national government considering supplying or stimulating the existing deficit? That's a possibility. Also, we have to consider that the need and impact is deep and broad in every sector of the economy, not only film. So only to the extent that we have clarity as to what the global impact has been and how this can be compensated in various particular subsectors, such as film, such as FEC, then we can conduct that planning. But as of today, I cannot say that we will be taking particular action because the transversal measures to address COVID are still being considered.
Esta pregunta para Claudia.
This question goes to Claudia. We're asked, when will applications be live for this new incentive?
Momento dependiendo, señor viceministro, de...
Well, at present, we are waiting on our formal contract with the Ministry of Culture, but I expect that in the second week of July, we will be receiving the first applications, and they will be subjected to their proper evaluations, evaluated by technical secretaries at Pro Imágenes Colombia, which, as the Vice Minister, presided over by the Ministry of Commerce, Minister of Culture, 2 representatives from the President's Office, 1 representative from producers. These make up the Film Commission, as well as the Colombian Promotion Agency, Pro Colombia. The project will be approved by this committee, especially considering impact on the Colombian economy and Colombia's image abroad, as well as the development of its industry. Once this is approved, there will be a contract. The contract will give them certainty, as Rodrigo was saying, that they have funds designated if they comply with the requirements, auditing the certificate from the trust, where they have properly managed the funds, that they have expended all the funds they've brought to the country, and a certificate that they paid Colombians, because of course we're interested that local talent be paid opportunely according to all standing laws. So that is more or less the panorama.
Esperamos que
the process that needn't be long from application to all the instruments and contracts signed, we expect there to be no more than 2 months. There are a few questions in English that I'm going to paraphrase. Here's a question that says, I hope animals and children are protected and treated well during production. Children should not work more than 8 hours, and animals no more than 1 hour. It's being followed in Colombia. So I'd like to ask the Vice Minister and Rodrigo about children and the use of animals on set in Colombia. As I said in my first presentation, in Colombia, the work of minors on set was not forbidden, but neither was it regulated. And now the ICPF, which is the Child Welfare Institution in Colombia, is being too strict to the point of essentially limiting the right of children to the full development of their personality in terms of developing their talent. The regulation that is being developed at the present Child Welfare Institute continues to be rather restrictive, but it's predictable, which wasn't the case formerly when there was a regulatory action, creating uncertainty for any producer who wished to work with minors. 8 hours is likely far beyond what we will grant, but what you can be sure is that whenever minors are working on set, there will be experts present determining whether the pressure or the stress on the minor is undue, and these experts will have the right to cancel the shooting session should they determine that. So the guarantees of non-exploitation and non-abuse is crucial, and we there to be predictability in the system to not expose children or producers to anything undue. And as far as animals, that has always depended. I can't generalize here. I don't know how other production houses work or how it's been managed historically in the country. In our case, we have always had professional animal handlers, from insects all the way to large mammals. There has always been a trained handler. We've had specialists who have come from abroad to guarantee that the animals are properly cared for to the extent that on one international production or another, we were using messenger pigeons. The flight route for the pigeon was planned beforehand to guarantee that there would be no birds of prey, falcons, eagles, or some other animal that might attack the messenger pigeon, which is to say, we certainly take animal welfare into account. Therefore, I don't have an official answer. I'm talking about my personal experience at my production house. We have our own visions with regards to proper care for animals on set. We know that whenever there's a cat in the scene, you can have 4 cats because a cat can only work for so long, and then you have to change the cat. And the same goes for other sorts of animals. We can't have an animal concentrating for too long. So the animals work very short periods and have long rests, otherwise the production becomes a nightmare, and we are well aware. We have a question here regarding the monetization of incentives. Rodrigo already discussed it to some extent. But the question here is, how can the Film Commission assist in this process of monetization of the incentives? I would like to direct this question to Rodrigo, and I will complement his answer. This is exactly what we were explaining a few minutes ago. The monetization of the incentives for Law 1556 is something that we cannot yet affirm. We can't say how much the certificates will be sold and bought for. As any new process, there will be the early adopters, pioneers who are willing to enter the market and come out and begin negotiating with investors, local actors that need certificates to improve their tax burden, their financial planning in Colombia. So going right to your question, what assistance granted by the Commission and the authorities? The assistance is having the system up and running, but from there, the private market, private agreement between foreign production house and the national, either a financial company or a service company in Colombia, that the producer can enter into an agreement with, so that it's not the production company in Colombia, but a financial service company in Colombia. And that way the foreigner will inform the local producer that they have already agreed on a scheme with third parties to negotiate the certificates, which is to say, it's not an obligation of the local production house. The local production house can offer options to the international producer, but it is the decision and choice of the international producer and investor to determine how to negotiate those certificates, because ultimately that is benefit that is granted to them. The benefits are for the foreigners, not for the Colombian production house. So my advice there, if the question is from a foreign investor or a foreign producer, take a look at your options. Research the local market. Call possible commissioners, intermediaries, and see who offers you the best option. And that way you can make a choice and you understand whatever risks are involved in that choice. But that is not the responsibility or the option of the Colombian authorities. Negotiation is entirely a private matter. And the authorities should not be involved in that transaction. I'm asked whether this conference will be recorded. Yes, that's right. This conference is being recorded and we will rebroadcast it on Pro Imagenes social networks and on the Ministry of Culture's social networks. Another question, Portal Legal, regarding equity funds. Are there any equity funds available in Colombia? In this case, we have to go back to what kind of project we have. And this is a key point because it's part of the larger conversation that we are having with many producers. Law 1556 is not designed the main goal of the law is not for there to be investment by Colombians in productions. There may be Colombian investment, and here Sylvia will correct me if there can be a Colombian co-producer in the FFP or in SINA. Both of them can have a Colombian co-producer. Or the FFP project can be Colombian or foreign. And what's considered is the total expenditure of the project in the country. For SINA, projects must be foreign. But in the event of a co-production, it's the international producer that can apply to the certificate. So what Sylvia just said is very important. Because the Colombian financial stake does not enjoy benefits. So in that regard, for an investor, again, this is a private agreement. If the foreign producer comes to an agreement with a Colombian investor that is interested in being part of that production, because beyond the incentive, it is a good investment, and there is an interest, be it economic or creative or a business interest in participating, then you can come to that agreement. But under Law 1556, there are not incentives for the local producer, the Colombian producer, for the SINA. At the fund, there may be incentives. That has always been open from the first issuing of Law 1556. So equity funds in Colombia are not easy to come by. There are certain funds. There are a few of them that have investment funds for Colombian production. Once again, you'd have to do your due diligence and see which company might be able to make a capital investment. And the major analysis here is, depending on the project, you have to make a choice about whether that production should choose Law 1556 or should it go through 814, which is the law for Colombian production. With Law 814, there is a model of points that allow you to qualify for co-production, and there are certain maximums and another set of incentives. The other thing that's important to mention is that if this is Law 814 or 1556, if it is a Colombian production or co-production, you have to pay sales tax. You have to include sales tax in the cash flow, your VAT or your sales tax. I'm going to back up a bit because the sun is. So if it is Colombian production, then you do have to pay VAT or sales tax, which is an additional increase. If it's not a Colombian production or co-production, you are VAT free, sales tax free, which is a whole other scenario when it comes to cash flow. So again, you have to take a look at the project, take a look at the goals of the project, see what it's seeking, and based on that, analyze whether you want to go with Law 814, Law 1556, and if it's Law 1556, whether you're going with the FCC or with SINA. Each of these deductions then has to be examined on a case-by-case basis. Vice Minister, I'm asked what genres apply to the incentives that we've discussed today. Well, we've already mentioned several times. For FSC, genres that would apply would be films, television series, and music videos. And SINA applies for those three, and in addition for advertising,
Videojuegos.
short web series, and video games. Question for Claudia. How long has been the process of application to the grant been ongoing? Or how long does it take? Well, the process typically depends a great deal on the applicant.
Más que se van a pedir ya están
It's
en
quite
los
simple. The requirements for each modality are clearly laid out
disponibles.
in the designation manual for funds, which are available on our website, locationcolombia.com. When ProImágenes receives an application, it'll take it approximately 2 weeks to review the budgets, the supporting documents that accredit that the company that is applying indeed exists, and how the project is financed
financiando
in order to determine how the expenditure in Colombia is going to be financed. This is then handed over to the film committee in Colombia, and given that applications will be consistently open, well, then the committee will be meeting consistently according to the flow of applications. And once the decision is made, we will take another 2 weeks at the most to draw up the corresponding contract. And then you can open your trust
a gastar en Colombia y a
and
filmar.
begin spending in Colombia and begin shooting. Okay. I'm asked by Rodrigo as to what is the effective discount for the sale of cinemas in the market. Are there any expectations, any studies? We can't know yet. It would be irresponsible to venture a figure at this point. and this is an official space to present the government model, so it wouldn't be appropriate to speculate and create an expectation in the market as to how much this can be sold for. We are still in an analysis stage. What's important is that there's an intention for it to be as close as possible to 100% of the nominal value of the certificate. But we expect in the coming weeks, again, this is a private agent, because this is beyond the scope of the authorities. It has to be managed in the private sector, it's a private transaction. But we hope soon to understand how much these benefits may be sold for. As Minister, I'm asked, incentives are valid both for Colombian production contracts as well as for foreign partners in the case of a co-production? Is there another way to express that question? What are we talking about exactly? When you say contracts, you mean a foreign work that's going to be shot in Colombia? I would imagine that it depends on whether it's a co-production or an international production. If it's co-production that includes Colombian funds, if it's the FFC, benefit could apply to both components, with what Rodrigo said, given or considering the FTC has a limit on the size of the works, whereas with TINA, the certificate would only apply for the international component. Okay, here we have another question for Rodrigo. It says, from your experience in this panorama, how do you see the current capacity of the Colombian industry to expand on this strong point of production services after all the growth and training that has taken place in this industry? Move towards a stronger emphasis on original production with the capacity to reach global audiences? This is a very good question in the long term. And the answer is that's the plan. The whole system of incentives to attract international productions in Colombia has the ultimate goal of being able to improve our capacity for local production so that in Colombia we can generate stories and productions that travel the world. That's precisely why these incentives exist. And this is something that internally in Colombia has been misinterpreted, because precisely what these incentives do is shorten the distance between Colombia and other countries that are decades ahead of us in production, whether that's Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Spain, countries that have had long experience. The point of this law is to shorten that distance, and we're already seeing it. Colombia is a permanent destination for production for clients such as Netflix. HBO already came in, Amazon is coming in strongly with original content, Colombian scripts, Colombian intellectual property, not to mention other products, Movistar Plus, Claro Video, which is to say, we're already seeing all this. We're seeing it and it's happening. So that's the goal. And if you read the assignation manual, it's clear that at the end, this technology, this knowledge transfer is the ultimate goal of the program. So the plan is to arrive at a balance where Colombia has sufficient talent, capacity for execution, to be able to compete at the same level and have a space for Colombian content in this space and on this platform. One bit of news is very important and that I want to include in this answer. Clients such as Netflix and Amazon are not only seeking original series in Colombia, they're also seeking Colombian films, which places us in a different position with an option for financing Colombian films. So news, very positive in the medium and long term. Sylvia, I would like to add the ambition behind this whole process
Audiovisual.
for Colombia to become a major audiovisual hub where both national and international productions can thrive. part of being a big national producer means that we have to import technology and knowledge that we didn't have, that were first developed abroad, and we have to bring that. So the Beagle can tell us how the production environment has changed over the last 20 years, given that there's been a sustained process of opening up to the international. What we're seeking is for Colombia to be at becoming a major national hub for production. And the benefit here will be not only in allowing us to do better national production, it also allows us to present the country to the whole world. A century ago, it was said that commerce followed film. Well, today, tourism, commerce, diplomacy, an enormous number of positive externalities are generated through audiovisual production. When a Colombian craft is seen in a piece of audiovisual production that's enjoyed abroad, that element enjoys a market abroad. When Colombian fashion is seen in a piece of audiovisual production, that finds a market abroad. When our form of expression is seen abroad, it becomes much easier for us to do business, to visit other countries. So audiovisual support is essential to strengthen the strategic labor for the country. And this is important internationally. Thank you very much, Vice Minister. I'm asked about funds at the FFC, and I would add also in CEPA. What is the minimum requirement to be able to access these incentives? Well, the minimum requirement is for the investment to be at least $475,000 in a given period. That will depend on the kind of work and the sort of arrangement. Depend on whether it's the FFC or SINA. This year, the SINA had 5 billion pesos. So far, they have been assigned. The availability is 91 billion pesos in certificates. This will allow us to leverage investments in the country in audiovisual production. The requirement is, of course, the investment level and for the committee to approve the works. It's not difficult for this to be approved from the point of view that we are seeking to be open, but in a very particular case of a proposal that presents something that may be offensive to a particular ethnic group, a production that maybe goes against some right or something that's interesting for the country, then there may be limitations. But in every other regard, regardless of whether it's comedy, drama, requirement, the idea is for this to be a work that uses everything that the country has to offer to the maximum degree. Here we have a question that I believe I will answer. It says, with this, do you have experience with productions from other Latin American countries, be they co-productions or not? I'll answer that question with regards to the FFC. As you know, SINA is a brand new stimulus. We have no experience as yet. At the FFC, we did have South American productions, 2 projects that were financed by an Argentine producer that had operations in Colombia. We even had a production of a Colombian short that's financed by a Colombian company. I'm also asked of legal, in the event of a multilateral production, does each partner manage their own incentives, or are they all focused on the major stakeholder? We come again to the difference between Law 814 and Law 1556. I suppose the question is geared to Law 1556 and the system of incentives that that law offers. In this sort of case, where there is a multilateral co-production, but in the Colombian case, that is a foreign investor So that is effectively centralized through the major stakeholder, or not necessarily major stakeholder in terms of money, but in terms of who's clear about how to manage all these various resources and funds from multiple sources to focus those resources as a foreign investment into Colombia. We have done several of these productions, which are multilateral co-productions in countries on 2 or 3 different continents. But when it comes to applying and executing the fund and incentives offered in Colombia, that's a foreign fund. It comes from a foreign bank account. There's a foreign partner, which is the main producer or the signing producer, and it's executed as a single source of income. But how do the foreign parties get organized? And how do they decide who is going to be the major partner to apply for Colombian authority? That is a decision on the private side. For us in Colombia, that's considered a foreign producer, they're foreign funds. Very well, I'm going to formulate the final question. The other questions will be answered via email. And I would like Claudia to close with an answer to this question. Gerardo Guerra says that he has a good impression of what's being done, but he would like to know what your opinion is on the critique that these incentives have increased the cost of local production, making independent production more difficult.
Mercado se tendrá que
Well,
estabilizar.
the market will have to stabilize at some point. As I said at the beginning, we have grown very quickly with these options. As yet, we are a young production destination. But this has also gone hand in hand with an enormous number of professionals that are graduating from our universities and from universities abroad, who are becoming professional in the various crafts and positions that are required for very competitive crews. So I believe there has been a process of adjustment. Certainly Colombian films are requiring, on the one hand, talent, and sometimes when a large production from Netflix arrives, and they're not going to pay them all that much more, but perhaps the professionals do want to become known because they want that soundtrack and only that soundtrack. But I do think that Colombia has to consider all the components that are emerging from universities, young professionals that are graduating with excellent skills and that need to begin to participate in national production. So I believe it's a process of balance and adjustment. Certainly what some require,
Que han hecho 10 películas en Colombia, pues a lo mejor va a tener
if
que
an
también
international production requires one of the talent that have done 10 different productions in Colombia, they will have to take a look at some of the other talent that is emerging from our national universities and international universities. I wanted to add my 2 bits to that last question to complement Claudia's answer, because that is, I would say, an incorrect understanding of the effect that the incentives are having. If you take a look at the number of films produced in Colombia through Law 814 in recent years, there have been more Colombian productions in parallel to the increase of the sale of productions. So if there was an increase, if Colombian services were getting more expensive, then we wouldn't be producing more Colombian films. And what Claudia says is very true. There's a dynamic of opportunity generated with younger technical crew members, and we're already seeing that. And the example that Claudia gave is very good. Formerly, we had a tiny group of skilled sound people. Today, that's a much larger group. So what this has allowed is that the people who before Law 1556 were leading the market, for a while they have focused on Law 1556, but they too are beginning to return to independent production. And there's a new group, a new generation that is finding opportunity thanks to a dynamic that is much accelerated thanks to international production. The other day I was seeing trailers of new Colombian films, and the production values are extremely high, and the young crews, new crews. Pardon me, Rodrigo, but I have to interrupt you because unfortunately time is limited, and therefore we have to close just now. We have to close this panel. Thank you so much to the technical team that supported this panel, Manuela Jaramillo, Dardo Cantor. We'll be answering your other questions by email. And I'd like to invite you once again to visit our Martian film. There you'll be able to find the Ford Colombia companies that are participating in this market, and you can make appointments with them. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much.
Today, we wish only to meet once again. But while we await this reunion, the world can rest assured that Colombia will continue working with increasing passion. That our businesses will stop at nothing. That our land will continue flourishing, producing exciting flavors, quality raw materials, and products that improve lives. Today, more than ever, Colombians are creative, innovative entrepreneurs. Today, we assure the world that it can keep believing, investing, trusting, and seeing Colombia as a great ally, as a country that keeps moving forward and holds its doors wide open to welcome you back. We'll meet again soon.